So our first speaker is Professor Benedicte LEMELIJN from the Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium. The title of her presentation is "The Future of Theology, Listening to the Human Cry for Meaning." Professor LEMELIJN is a scholar of Old Testament and is a dean at the faculty. Professor, welcome. The floor is yours.
To all of you. I hope you can hear me. Like this, I see. So we have half an hour, which is very, very limited, to speak about the human cry for meaning and that related to the future of theology. But I'll do my very best. And I start with an introduction. If we ask ourselves, what will be the future of theology? Then I see that that question is very actual. Even in the last 6-7 months, I was in 2 conferences in Rome. The first one was COCTI, the meeting for deans of faculties of theology and rectors, in May 24, and the other one was an international conference in which some of you also participated, maybe, organized by the Dicastery for Culture and Education in December. Both conferences had the theme of the future of theology in their focus. And in the words of Pope Francis addressing us in December, there were special words for that question. And he said what it is about is questioning whether the theological heritage of the past can still speak to today's challenges and help us imagine the future. That is the question. And you see here that that question is about relevance. It is a question of impact. And he added 2 things to it and said that he had, is something wrong? I can go on that side. I'm here, but I need to move my computer. Just a minute. Okay like that? Is it okay? Okay. So, let me retake what I was saying. So that the question on relevance and impact was put as a question, but the Pope, former Pope I should say now, added 2 things. He said there's a desire and there's an invitation related to it. The desire, he said, is this, and now I left my paper with all this moving. And the desire is this, namely, that theology helps to rethink how to think. And then he discussed the dangers of simplification. He said we really need to go beyond simplification, because simplification is the cause of all radicalization, of all fundamentalism. So we need to move beyond, he said. And how? Well, through the actualization and application of an interdisciplinary approach, of more than one approach, even cross-disciplinary approach. And to that desire, he added an invitation to all of us, actually speaking, and said that theology should be accessible to all. He explained that many people today are looking for meaning, that sometimes in the middle of their life they have questions, even to the end of their life. It's not always at 18-year-old that they have questions, but throughout the lifetime. And he said theology should not exclude these people, but should be institutes, should form institutes with an open door. So if we start from that, and we look around today, then we see that indeed we live in very special times. New times, but new times with very ancient needs. And what we see is kind of a paradox. I don't have to explain very much or very long on how non-evident Christianity is now, today, especially in the West. How indeed people on Sundays are not very numerous, theology students, seminarians are not always very numerous. I'm talking about our countries here. So it's not self-evident anymore. But from the other side, there is something very specific and very much remarkable, and that is the paradox. Namely that many, many people, including young people, are searching for meaning, the cry of meaning that I had in my title. They are indeed questioning and searching for what really matters, what is happiness, what gives meaning or fulfillment to our lives, what is wisdom. All kind of that questions are very actual. So when people say the times are non-religious, the times have lost all faith, I do not really agree. People have maybe lost or never have known the traditional core of Christianity anymore, but they have some kind of a searching religious feeling. And I'm going to illustrate somehow, before we move on how to answer, and having in mind the Pope's invitation, on how to meet those needs. I give you a few illustrations from daily life. This is in Dutch, but I'll translate it. It's a part of an article, and it says, is this everything? Is dit alles? Is this everything? Searching the meaning of life is a trend, it says. And then the whole text, exploring what makes you really happy, thinking of the essence of life, that is what meaning is about. And in the meantime, so many people are searching that we can speak of a trend. That's what this text says. Now this text does not come from the Journal of Parishes or some ecclesial journal or from Tech2 or any other Belgian journal related to religion or church. It comes from a simple women magazine with thousands of people reading it. So if that kind of a magazine puts 2 pages in this question, that means that people indeed are questioning these things. I give you another one. You go to the airport, some of you have come through the airports, a major advertisement. It's an advertisement for cosmetics, as you can see, creams and balms and whatever. And the text is the ritual of Ayurveda, the ancient art of living wisely. Now, if you focus on that, ritual is a religious term, Ayurveda is a religious tradition. Ancient art is something in the search of wisdom, living wisely, wisdom. And you see the lady is in some state of mind that we can dream of. Anyway, you see a simple advertisement for cosmetics, but alluding to this search for meaning. Another one, next to the road, this was in Stellenbosch. And what does it say? You see the lady, she's bathing there. And what does it say? Take the weight off your mind, your body, and your soul. Now, soul is a religious term. Your mind, your body, and soul alludes to the wholeness of people, of humans, in all of their aspects. And what is this? It's an advertisement for a wellness resort. It's again a non-religious text. It's something next to the road inviting you to go to some relaxing wellness resort. So you see, the kind of advertisement appeals to people. If it wouldn't, they would not use it. I have one more, or 2 more. This the desk of a hotel in Austria last summer. It is full of values that you could discuss in your religion classes. It's about joy, it's about peace, it's about being, it's about the now, it's about attentiveness, it's about faith, happiness, all kind of values that are non-material, that are really in the realm of meaning. And finally, these are all little paper that you can find on your tea bags. You drink a tea, and you see on the tea bag, this, I must admit, it's from the brand of Yogi tea, so maybe it's a little bit in that corner. But anyway, if you read on them, you cannot read it, of course, in the room. But I'll tell you, one in the middle, for example. No, the second from on top. We take that one. It says, "This place where you are right now, God circled on a map for you. You're drinking your tea, and they are referring to God." I mean, there is something in our times that search for something deeper, if even tea bags remind you of that. So, coming to some kind of observation, indeed, that human cry for meaning, which was in my title, is observable everywhere. If you go back home, if you go to the airport, if you go in the shopping streets, just pay attention to it. So, what I observe in that is that maybe it is about the core of human being. Maybe even more about the core of religiosity in the broadest sense of the word. And so, if we think and reflect about Christianity in that context, it is a new context. And so with that, it can remind us of Vatican II, speaking about reading the signs of time, then I think indeed these phenomena are signs of the time. This was my introduction. In what will follow, I will have 3 parts. Because of time, I will really limit the second one. But the first one will be just an illustration, explanation on what this search for meaning is all about and where we meet it, how we can see it. The second would be like a journey through time and see where in Christianity we have the same needs and the same accents, the same emphasis, and how we could put them in dialogue. We will do that with big stepstones just because of time. I've written a book on it, by the way, which will be translated, and then you can read it in full. But the third part I'm moving because this paper is in the section on Bible. So the third one will be on where do we find this kind of search in the Bible, namely in the grounded or earthed essence of biblical wisdom. So I start with the first one, searching for and longing for more, something more, or this deeper meaning in many and pluriform ways. If we think about, maybe I should ask you to say when my time is reaching like 10 minutes or so. Okay, because we started 10 past, I need somewhere to go. So, if we start with the first part, this pluriform and manifold ways of searching, then we see that there is also a renewed attention for spirituality. Now, spirituality comes from spirare, and if you look at all of these attempts to find relaxation, you will see that it's often about our breathing. Spirare means to breathe, respirare is to breathe in and out repetitively. And we see that in the language, the spirare of the breath is linked to the spiritus of our spirit. Right, or at least in analogy with the Hebrew loach, which can mean breath and wind, but also the spirit. And also in analogy with the Greek, dynamis. So there seems to be a link between our deepest core, our breathing, which anchors us in the present, but which also connects us to everything around us and everything transcending us. And it's there that this broad way of spirituality comes in. And it has to do, if you look a little bit more specifically, with an attitude of attentiveness, with a fashionable word, mindfulness. You have attention for what's happening in the here and now. Second, it has to do with a longing for a deep connectedness, as it is said in English, and harmony with the whole reality, the reality surrounding us in a horizontal way, and the reality transcending us in a vertical way. And thirdly, it longs to wholeness, becoming one, to harmony, to unity. And if we take a look at that, then indeed maybe we move in the direction of religious awareness, because what is religion about? If you look at the word religio, you can have two explanations. It can be from religare, and then it's binding, connecting, and rebinding, making that repetitively or intensively, or you can put it in harmony with relegere. It means reading, contemplating reality, and do that intensively. So it is in search of what connects, the binding, and transcends. And in this you have this paradox of something underlying, fundamental, but also orientating, transcendent, to a reality beyond us. So what we see in that very fundamental reality of religion is that there is a deeper underlying reality for all people in all religions, or even not yet. I'm talking about a fundamental, some deep experience of a deeper reality that people have searched words for. They have come to a religious awareness. That religious awareness has indeed been given words, formulations, texts, rituals, symbols in religious traditions. And we see that beyond all of the concrete religious traditions, you have this ultimate fundamental searching that people cannot really define or cannot really describe, but that is there. So if we look at all these attempts, we see three constant and returning elements. And these ones you need to keep in mind because they will come back in the second and the third part. The one is a mindful awareness of the here and now. And also that you can see in the names of shops, in the names of a cafe, the moment, for example. So the here and now. Awareness of the here and now. Secondly, aiming at harmony with and connectedness to the surrounding greater reality, but also a transcending reality. And thirdly, a realization of a meaningful life in wholeness, reaching fulfillment, reaching happiness, reaching peace, all of that. So three elements: the here and now, the connectedness with our reality, horizontal and vertical, and all of that coming together in the realization of a meaningful life. There are a lot of examples which I will also only name now because of time. You have the real height of mindfulness. You have a renewed interest very strongly also in Leuven for the antique philosophy, the thinking of Aristotle on happiness, for example, where he makes a difference between hedonism, the joy of the moment, and eudaimonia, the real deep being of which eudaimon. The positive psychology, which is not healing sicknesses, but which is reversely looking at what is it that makes people happy? What is there that makes people feeling fulfilled? And then there you see same kinds of distinctions between a purely pleasant life, you like the apple that you eat, an engaged life, you are doing something for other people or for some higher cause, and a meaningful life that really fulfills you with meaning. And indeed, the terms happiness, meaning, accomplishment go in the same direction. We have spirituality as a very broad concept in all forms. We have the attention in medicine and psychiatrics where people are getting conscious of the fact that we are not pure body, not pure soul, not pure mind, but that everything works together, that you can have headaches not because something is wrong in your brain, but because some people are making difficulties to you. So, and reversed, you can have a thyroid problem and you become very impatient. So there's a connectedness. The height of yoga, I would like to expand on that, but for time I don't do. And then you could even question whether maybe that kind of culture is becoming some kind of a new religious culture. And maybe it's one step too far for you. But if you think of these two examples, the Book of the Alchemist, has anybody read it? You see? In every audience that I speak to, people have read it. It is a book sold on millions. My copy at home, it says 30 million. This one is even more recent, so I don't know what maybe language. While it is a book that really speaks about a religious search of an individual, connecting its aim of life to the search of the whole of reality in life. And it makes use of Christian terms, of Islamic stories, about Hindu, all kinds of religions are there. And maybe even more surprising to you is my picture of Star Wars there. If some of you have ever taken the effort to look at a movie, I have only seen one when our kids were teenagers, but anyway, in that movie they're full of religious symbols. Anakin Skywalker has a mother, but he doesn't have a father. He asks, where can I find the Force? Where can I find wisdom? And Yoda answers, it's within you and it's all around you. Now listen to what I'm saying. And then in those days, also teenagers said to each other, may the Force be with you. They went in a youth camp and said, may the Force be with you. Well, actually, it's not so far from may God bless you. I mean, there is a search for a deeper reality. Now, if we would take a look from that pluriform and manifold reality of today, in many ways, then you see that it searches for meaning in all kinds of religions and all kinds of traditions. It's not linked to one tradition. And even if you would ask people in the street, they would refer to Eastern religions very often. So what I intend to do, how is my time?
7 minutes.
Okay. So if you would now look at these manifold ideas and compare them to a Christian, Judeo-Christian context, then you would see, and that's what I will do in really great leaps of a giant, that also in the Judeo-Christian tradition, you can find the search for these same three elements. You remember? The attentiveness for the here and now, the connectedness and the harmony with the surrounding and the transcending reality, and the search for a meaningful life in harmony, in peace, in happiness. Okay, so let's take those steps with giant leaps and start somewhere very, very classically with Gregory of Nazianzus. Now, as you know, I'm a biblical scholar and no patristic scholar, but anyway, I just want to point out one thing. If we look at Gregory, he lived in a context in which there was a rather small Christianity surrounded by so-called pagans in other religions, and moreover, there were internally, within the Christian organization, let me call it that way, internal disputes. You remember the homoousios and the homoousios and all of those theological debates. And so that was his context. And at a certain moment, Gregory says, what we are doing is far too much rationalism. We are trying to grasp God in a little box. And so he refers to the question, are we actually able to know God? Knowing with our rational capacity. And he says, he makes a difference between agnoia and agnosia. Agnoia, or let me start reverse, agnosia is not knowing. Like now, at this moment, I don't know where my daughter is. I just don't know. Agnoia is, I cannot know. We're not able to know. And so he says, God is in the realm of agnoia, we cannot know him rationally. And so he refers to something beyond, namely encounter, mystic encounter, the eistasis of the experience, the theosis, the contemplation. So he leaves behind all of those words and formulations and concepts and goes further. Now, if we compare that to Christianity today, then we see that there is kind of a similar context. We are a church, I'm speaking of the West perspective, of course. We are falling back into a safe cocon sometimes, making new structures, but we are facing a pluriform reality and context of longing of spirituality that I described. So, should we close our doors or should we rather open them and open into dialogue and in mutual learning what is essential and what true Christian tradition were the answers to the search that I described? And so that's one element. Second element is that after enlightenment, also we have really gone far in searching for words, for knowing, for concepts, for dogmas, and maybe we have tried too much to know and explain, and we have lost a little bit of the deep experience of transcendence, the deep meaning of the encounter with the divine. If you think about our Eucharist, for example, there is so few space for silence and personal prayer. It is going on and going on in a very beautiful sequence, but the encounter, personal encounter, is sometimes not there. As Rana already said in 71, the faithful of tomorrow be a mystic, someone who has experienced something, or there will be no more. So, also in the Judeo-Christian tradition, we could see these three elements, and that's what I want to go through with you quickly. 2 more minutes, even starting from 1:15. Oh my God. Okay, I'll conclude with this part. So, if we would look at these three elements, you can find them in bookshops, in many kind of books. But you can find the same elements also in the monastic tradition. You can find them in the Desert Fathers. You can find them in Benedict. You can find them in the Cistercian Reform. You can find them in Francis of Assisi. All of these leaps you can explain. You can also find them in mysticism, Greenwich mysticism, Meister Eckhart, the Carmel Reform, for example. And in all of them you see that you have a life in deep connectedness with God, one, but you can see that prayer and actual engagement are intrinsically correlated, and that the result from that, from this here and now, in prayer, in connectedness, the result is an essential transformation of the personal life. So you see the same starting points in the here and now, linked to a vertical layer with God, and result in a transformation of God. And you can see it very recently also in the new movements on Christian meditation. Maybe you might know the World Community of Christian Meditation, starting not coincidentally from Benedictine and Trappist monks, Thomas Keating, Lawrence Freeman, John Wayne, where you also can see the real connection in meditation of our body and our mind and our soul. The body is not something inferior, it's constituted for who we are. And so the books that you can see in the bookshelves, you can find other ones from within the Christian tradition in the same attempt to find them. And so there is, I'm concluding my final part, there is also an echo of that in the Bible. So what I'm trying to show is that these multiple and manifold search today is not something that we only can learn from Eastern religions, as many people think, but that it was there in the Judeo tradition all the time. And then thirdly, it's also already in the Bible, especially in the biblical wisdom. The biblical sapiential literature is very down to earth, starts in the here and now, is rooted in daily reality, but it is also connected see in that is indeed that biblical wisdom also has two poles. A horizontal one, in which the immanence and the human vulnerability is at stake. A vertical one, in which the attentiveness to transcendence is there. And the crossing point of both is the intersection where the attitude of wisdom becomes real. Now, if you look at the biblical wisdom literature, and I'm sorry we do not have more time, you can see that to each of these three dimensions, you can find a typically sapiential concept. Linked to the horizontal one, you have the righteousness. Linked to the vertical one, you have the respect of the or the fear of the Lord, and in the intersection you come to the concept of the blessing of the Most High. So if we would put that next to our elements today, then you can see that life in the here and now gets its counterpart in the concept of righteousness, which is about the distinction between good and evil to ourselves, but also to fellow people, and then to God. The harmony and connectedness of the second. The search vertically is linked to the fear of the Lord, which has nothing to do with being afraid of God, but it has everything to do with a fundamental respect for God. And we see that the intersection is a meaningful life in wholeness and happiness in the broad way. And we see in the wisdom literature that the intersection is the blessing of the Most High. The wise people, the tzaddik, the righteous people will get blessed. So I come to my conclusion. In biblical wisdom, it's really the conclusion. It says conclusion. So the deep conscious of God's transcendence in biblical wisdom is similar to Gregory's one. It's similar to that idea of huge reality. It's greater than our heart, it's greater than our minds, and it's about God carrying our reality and caring for humans, not neutral. And we see in a biblical wisdom also that consciousness of a beyond, namely that we cannot know God, we cannot grasp Him. Cyrus says we need always to praise Him because it's never enough. So if we think about that and we make the connection, then we see indeed what is the future of theology about? Well, there is only future if we link it to the relevance, to the impact that it can have in our societies. And if we see a society in which people are almost desperately searching for meaning, that's why I called it a cry for meaning, then we even have the duty to answer them in what we have to offer, to reach out, to dialogue, and not as people knowing everything better than them, but in an open dialogue, in mutual learning. So the future of theology is not away from the world, it's within the contemporary world. It is with an attentive ear to the needs of all people, there where the human cry for meaning is heard, and it's all its contextual diversity throughout the world. And if that is true, then you can say indeed like Tolkien, not all those who wander are lost, they are searching. And then indeed, let's keep Pope Francis' words in mind. He says, please, if any of these people knock at the door of theology, of the schools of theology, may they find it open. Make sure that these women and men find in theology an open house, a place where they can resume their journey, a place where they can seek, can find, and seek again. Let's keep that in mind in open dialogue and reach out. Thank you, and sorry for the
Thank you very much.